Hello and welcome to the CRRSA EANS I Round 2 statewide training from the Texas Education Agency's Department of Grant Compliance and Administration. This is a pre-recorded presentation and live question and answer sessions will be held at a later date. Today we have myself, Nick Davis, the Emergency Assistance for Non-Public Schools Program Coordinator, alongside the other Emergency Assistance for Non-Public Schools Coordinator, Lawrence Quintero Pulse, who will be providing the training over the CRRSA EANS I program today. If you need to contact myself or Lawrence, please feel free to give us a call at our phone numbers or shoot us an email and we will get back to you as soon as possible. This presentation is intended solely to provide general information and guidance to Texas LEAs, ESCs, and participating private schools, and reflects the Texas Education Agency's current understanding of statute and applicable federal guidance. The content of this presentation is subject to change as a result of further potential information and guidance provided by federal agencies with regulatory oversight of these programs. This presentation does not constitute legal advice, and entities are therefore advised to seek legal counsel regarding the information and guidance provided in this presentation before acting on such information and guidance. The content of today's presentation will be as follows. We will begin with an overview of the TEA's EANS website, frequently asked questions, and then resources offered by the Education Service Center Region 10 and guidance from the United States Department of Education. This will be followed by an overview of the CRRSA EANS I grant program and important deadlines and information that pertains to private schools and the TEA. This will be followed by a demonstration of the CRRSA EANS I Round 2 application for private schools, and this will be followed with scheduled dates for the Q&A sessions for the CRRSA EANS I Round 2 program. These slides will be made public on the TEA EANS webpage as soon as possible. So starting with the website and resources, up here at the top, we have the TEA's EANS website. This is where the most recent announcements and information regarding the EANS program for Texas private schools is available. The second bullet point is the TEA's frequently asked questions and submission link for those questions. The top link is the live FAQ page with all of the most recently answered questions from the TEA. The second link is the submission form where private schools can submit any questions they want to the TEA EANS team. The third bullet is Education Service Center Region 10's EANS resources, which is constantly being updated with new forms and information for participating private nonprofit schools in the EANS I program. And lastly, we have the federal guidance page, which has the United States Department of Education's webpage for the EANS program, as well as their frequently asked questions page. So starting off with the CRRSA EANS I program highlights. So EANS was authorized under CRRSA, which was part of the Governor's Emergency Education Relief or Gear 2 Fund, which was authorized by the Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations or CRRSA Act, which was signed into law on December 27th, 2020. Emergency Assistance for Non-Public Schools, or EANS, provides funding for assistance and services to non-public schools suffering from the impact of COVID-19. Allowable uses of EANS funding include costs associated with safely reopening schools, continuing instruction, addressing learning loss, supporting educational technology, and reimbursing for certain coronavirus-related expenses. Funds may be used for pre-award costs dating back to March 13th, 2020, when COVID-19 was declared a national emergency, and must be fully expended by September 30th of 2023, which is the end of the EANS I grant period. So again, this was authorized under CRRSA for what we're calling EANS I. It is assistance and services only. There is no funding to private nonprofit schools or PNPs. The TEA administers the program statewide. Local school districts have no responsibilities, which is different from something like the ESSER I Equitable Services Program, where the ISDs were ultimately the middleman for that program. The TEA will be working with ESC Region 10 to implement the EANS program activities, provide eligible reimbursements, and to provide assistance and services directly or via a third-party contractor. And again, the link to Region 10's EANS website is posted there. The TEA was authorized to offer a second round of the CRRSA EANS I program funding, which is the training we're doing today. EANS II was authorized under the American Rescue Plan. This is a separate program and more information will be forthcoming. Please visit the TEA EANS website for more information and updates regarding EANS II, which again was authorized by the American Rescue Plan. So private nonprofit school eligibility. An eligible non-public school who applies for EANS I services is not a recipient of federal financial assistance. Reimbursements under this program are considered a service and do not change this determination for schools. The governor is the recipient of the award, and statute requires a public agency to control and administer the funds and to keep title to materials, equipment, or property purchased with EANS funds. An eligible non-public school is an elementary or secondary school that 1, is nonprofit, 2, is accredited, licensed, or otherwise operates in accordance with state law, 3, was in existence prior to March 13th, 2020, the date again that COVID-19 was declared a national emergency, and 4th, did not and will not apply for and receive a loan under the Small Business Administration's Paycheck Protection Program, or PPP, that is made on or after December 27th, 2020. Again, December 27th, 2020 is the day that the CRRSA statute was signed into law. So here is the CRRSA EANS I Round 2 timeline. The application will be made live for private nonprofit schools on August 30th of 2021. The application will be due to the TEA on October the 8th, 2021. November the 18th of 2021 is the last day for the TEA to review and process applications received. On or before December the 3rd of 2021, funding allocations will be announced and made public on the TEA EANS website, which will be much like the same process we did for the CRRSA EANS I Round 1 funding allocations. And September the 30th of 2023 is the last day for PNPs to receive services and is also the end of the CRRSA EANS I grant period. So here are the CRRSA EANS I program requirements. So the TEA is required per statute to target and prioritize funding to private nonprofit schools who have low-income students and PNPs that are most impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. And you will see both of these points come up in the live application here in a bit. The PNP may not receive both CRRSA EANS I and PPP after December 27th of 2020. You'll be contacted on both December the 6th and December the 13th of 2021 to confirm either PPP or CRRSA EANS I. The last day to notify the TEA in writing is December the 13th of 2021. Please notify us by email only if you have received and are planning on accepting a PPP loan. Services must be secular, neutral, and non-ideological. The TEA cannot limit services PNPs request in the application. The TEA may limit services to be provided based on the total volume of applications received and the services requested. The TEA may reimburse private nonprofit schools for the majority of allowable activities back to March 13th of 2020. Some activities may not be reimbursed, and these will be talked about in later slides. The PNP may not receive and duplicate benefits from ESSER I Equitable Services, PPP, or CRRSA EANS I Round 1. PNPs will also be asked to certify that assistance and services being requested in the Round 2 application have not already been applied for in the Round 1 application, if applicable to your school. PNPs that applied and received funding under CRRSA EANS I Round 1 are still eligible to apply and receive services under the CRRSA EANS I Round 2 application. But again, you are certifying that you are not ultimately double dipping and requesting services and assistance that have been requested in the round 1 application if your private nonprofit school applied and received services and assistance in the first round of EANS I. So these are the allowable assistance and services under the CRRSA EANS I program. So there are 3 sections of assistance and services that are available to PNPs in the application. The first section, which is D1, which is reimbursement of expenses incurred from March 13th of 2020, again, the date that COVID-19 was declared a national emergency, to the date your application was submitted to the Texas Education Agency. We have section D2, which is reimbursement of expenses incurred from the date following application submission to the Texas Education Agency, i.e. the following day, to September the 30th of 2023, again, the end of the grant period. We have section D3, request for procurement of services and assistance that will occur from August 2021 to September 30th of 2023, and these will be provided via ESC Region 10, who is the provider for the CRRSA EANS I services and assistance. Note that section D1 and D2 are reimbursements, while section D3 is procurement of services and assistance. Please do not reach out to ESC Region 10 until after service allocations have been made public by the TEA for the CRRSA EANS I Round 2 program. This again will be made on or before December 3rd of 2021. So starting off with section D1, which is requests for reimbursement of previous expenses. These are reimbursement of expenses that are incurred from March 13th of 2020 to the date your application was submitted to the Texas Education Agency. The allowable uses are as follows. You have supplies to sanitize, disinfect, and clean school facilities, does not include staff training on sanitization. Personal protective equipment, or PPP, or PPE, excuse me, and does not include staff training on the use of PPE. Portable air purification systems, physical barriers to facilitate social distancing, other materials, supplies, or equipment recommended by the CDC for reopening and operation of school facilities to effectively maintain health and safety, expanding capacity to administer coronavirus testing to effectively monitor and suppress the virus, educational technology, leasing sites or spaces to ensure social distancing, and reasonable transportation costs. For section D2, which is requests for reimbursement of future expenses, these are reimbursement of expenses that are incurred from the date following application submission to the Texas Education Agency, again, the following date. So if your application was submitted, let's say September the 2nd, that would apply to section D1, and September the 3rd, the following day, would apply for section D2 to September the 30th of 2023. These are the exact same allowable uses as section D1. The only thing that changes from D1 to D2 are the date ranges for reimbursement to your private nonprofit school. And the last section is section D3, which are requests for future assistance or services. These are requests for procurement of services and assistance that will occur from August of 2021 to September 30th of 2023. These will be provided via ESC Region 10. Again, these are the allowable uses. Supplies to sanitize, disinfect, and clean school facilities does not include staff training on sanitization. Personal protective equipment, or PPE, improving ventilation systems, including windows or portable air purification systems. The caveat here is that it does not include creation of new windows in pre-existing facilities, but improvements or modifications to pre-existing windows to allow for things such as better airflow. Training and professional development for staff on sanitization, the use of PPE, and minimizing the spread of infectious diseases. Physical barriers to facilitate social distancing, other materials, supplies, or equipment that has been recommended by the CDC for reopening and operation of school facilities to effectively maintain health and safety, expanding capacity to administer coronavirus testing to effectively monitor and suppress the virus, educational technology, redeveloping instructional plans for remote or hybrid learning or to address learning loss, leasing sites or spaces to ensure social distancing, reasonable transportation costs, and last, initiating and maintaining education and support services or assistance for remote or hybrid learning or to address learning loss. The bolded bullet points here are the changes from D1 and D2 into section D3, which have some additional allowable services and assistance. So the following allowable activities may only be provided by the TEA/contractor and may not be reimbursed to the private nonprofit schools. First is improving ventilation systems, including windows, except for portable air purification systems, which may be reimbursed. Any expenses reimbursed through a loan guaranteed under the Paycheck Protection Program prior to December 27th of 2020. Staff training and professional development on sanitization, the use of PPE, and minimizing the spread of COVID-19. Developing instructional plans, including curriculum development for remote or hybrid learning or to address learning loss, and initiating and maintaining education and support services or assistance for remote or hybrid learning or to address learning loss. Here's a list, but this is not the entire list of unallowable assistance and services under the EANS I program. The following activities may not be provided by the TEA or ESC Region 10. Subgrants to PNPs, salary to private nonprofit staff or full-time employees, costs for janitorial or cleaning services to clean buildings. Supplies are allowed, but not the actual cleaning service. So if you are requesting this, you cannot request the actual cleaning service itself. But if they are separating the supplies, the cleaning supplies, the disinfectant, and so forth, to sanitize your building, that is an allowable expense and can be listed on the application. Substitute teachers, while private nonprofit teachers are out with COVID-19, is not allowable. Touchless toilets, touchless faucets are not allowable. Any permanent structures are unallowable. Permanent renovations or remodels to pre-existing school facilities is unallowable. And any assistance or service determined not to be reasonable, necessary, or allowable under the CRRSA EANS I program, and the determination for these assistance and services will be made by the TEA's EANS team as to see if they align with federal guidelines in the intent of the CRRSA EANS I program. Again, here's the website, the frequently asked questions, as well as the Region 10 and U.S. Department of Education web pages and their frequently asked question pages. If you have any questions or technical assistance and need assistance with the application, please email EANS, that's all caps, EANS, at tea.texas.gov, and we would be happy to assist you with any assistance on the application or just general EANS related questions that you do not want to stick in the FAQs. So here are the next steps for private nonprofit schools. First, you're going to complete the CRRSA EANS I Round 2 application in Qualtrics. This link will be made public on the TEA EANS website. The EANS team then has 30 days from the recorded date of application to process, amend applications, and notify private nonprofit schools of your application status. Here are the 4 broad types of notification. First, we have negotiations for clarification, additional information, and so forth. We will periodically and very often probably be reaching out to clarify certain items, as we know that many of these items will be ultimately guessed upon and just stuck on the application, and we may need some more clarification to make determinations of their allowability. The second is amended application to confirm approved services or assistance if amendments were required on your application. A non-amended application to confirm approved services or assistance if there were no amendments required to your application. And lastly, a rejected application, and this will include reasons for ineligibility. And when we send you your finalized amended or non-amended application, we will also list all the changes that were made and reference the reasoning for those changes being made. The third step is that service allocations will be made separately and will be published in the same manner as round one via the TEA EANS website. While your application confirmation from the TEA will include a dollar amount on the application, this will not constitute the allotted amount that your school is going to be given through the grant program. The email notification to participating private nonprofit schools and the service allocations list on the TEA's EANS website will serve as the official TEA notification. The last step is that more information will be made as to the next steps for contacting ESC Region 10 to request reimbursement and procurement of service and assistance for EANS I Round 2. Again, do not reach out to ESC 10 until after service allocations have been made public by the TEA for CRRSA EANS I Round 2, either on or before December the 3rd of 2021. I will now turn it over to my colleague, Lawrence Quintero-Pulse, to walk us through the live application for CRRSA EANS I Round 2.
Thank you, Nick. To begin the application process, you will be accessing it on our EANS program website, Round 2 application, at the link listed at the very top. You will click that link to jump into the live application. Please keep in mind that we will close applications and you will not be able to submit them after October the 8th, 2021. If you have any technical issues with your application, please email us at eans@tea.texas.gov. If you need to make any changes to your applications, or if you need to have it reopened for certain circumstances, no changes will be accepted after the application end date of October 8th, 2021. So now that we're jumping into the live application, you'll notice at the very top that this is due October the 8th, 2021 by 11:59 p.m. Central Time. So we begin with a narrative on the program, on the purpose. The eligibility criteria are listed here for you again. And then we also have a timeline, which includes the date that the application opens, our timeline, and then our approval or response time for your applications, and including the allocations being made public by TEA. You can also click on this link if you want to visit our program website. In addition to that, you can also click on this link for the FAQs to our EANS program. And one final link is for those schools that are interested in downloading a program application first to be able to print it, pre-fill it out, to be able to get all of the information gathered and complete. You're welcome to do so by clicking on this PDF. Please remember that you must come into this application via Qualtrics and submit the electronic version of this application for TEA review. And we'll click on the right arrow to continue. So we start with your organization and contact information. So the first one's going to be the name of the PNP or the fiscal agent of a consortium or group of schools. And so throughout this application, I will be using examples or samples of information just to help us get through this application. The next one is your mailing address, the city. Notice that we're skipping the state since this application is for Texas PNPs. Your zip code. The email address of the authorized representative at your school. And that individual's contact phone number. The authorized representative will read through the certification, type in their name, and this individual should be at the level of principal or possibly higher based on the hierarchy of your school district. Keep in mind, this should be an individual that has been approved or designated to be able to legally bind the school into a contractual obligation. That individual needs to sign, and if you're like me and have sloppy handwriting using your trackpad or your mouse, you can sign as many times as needed or clear until you get it right. And then you would put the date that you're completing this application. In this example, I'm going to use August 30th, 2021, which is the first day of the application period. And then the next section takes us to Applicant Entity. You'll let us know if you're applying as one eligible PNP or as a group. If you are completing this as a consortia or group, you will need to download, complete, and attach the approved Excel document that is being provided in this application, and you will include in it all PNP names and their mailing addresses in this Excel. When you go to the next screen, this is where you will be allowed to upload that document. Since all of the schools in round one applied as one eligible school, this is the process we will take for this particular application. So the next section takes us into the PNP Eligibility Assurances. Your school must certify that they understand that all of the 6 following assurances are applicable to your school. So you'll just need to check the yes box in order to continue, and then you will be able to see the 6 assurances for your school, which were mentioned in the previous slide decks. So the first one is going to be you're a nonprofit school. The next one is that you are accredited, licensed, or otherwise approved to operate in accordance with state law. That your school existed and operated prior to March 13, 2020. That you are not applying for or receiving a PPP loan on or after December 27, 2020. That none of the assistance for this particular program application in Part B have already been supported by a loan under the PPP program or through any other federal funds, such as equitable services under CARES Act, accessor 1, and that those services and assistance for this application will be secular, neutral, and non-ideological. So all 6 assurances must be yes. Let's say, for example, that you selected no on one of these. You'll get a pop-up message at the top to let you know that this application has ended based on your no response, because these assurances must all be applicable to your school. So you're welcome to come back and check it to yes if it truly is applicable to be able to continue with the application. So the next part is providing to us the low-income student data, the impact to your school, and the certification for your PPP. Keep in mind that TEA will be prioritizing services or assistance to those schools with the highest enrollment of low-income students and those most impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. If your school is a consortia or group, be sure that you complete Part C as an aggregate for all of the member schools that are in your application. Also note that this information must be from the 2019-2020 school year, preferably before March 13th, 2020, which is when the pandemic was declared for the state of Texas. So in the first box, you'll need to list the total student enrollment at your school for the 1920 school year. I'm going to use an example of 500 students. In box B, you'll list the number or estimated number of students from low-income families at your school for the 1920 school year. And I'll use the example of 250. And then in box C, you will have to do a manual calculation to get the percentage or estimated percentage of total students at your school who are from low-income families by dividing the number in box B by the number in box A. And in this case, it'll be 50% using this example. And then the next section, you'll let us know what data source you used in order to make the determination of low-income students at your school. So it could be free or reduced price lunch data. It could include scholarship or financial assistance data similar to free or reduced price lunch eligibility. It could also be E-rate data, or it could be other relevant data that your school provided to the state for the purposes of other state or local programs. It could also be data imputing the number of students, such as that information pulled from surveys, such as the American Community Survey, or those provided by the U.S. Census Bureau. You could have also used the proportionality data, which is the number of students enrolled at your school who reside in a Title I school attendance area multiplied by the percentage of public school students in that same attendance area who are from low-income families. If your school has students who reside in more than one Title I school attendance area, multiple calculations would be necessary. While this process may be more time-consuming, it actually may yield a higher percentage of low-income students for your school. And the final one is that it is possible that some schools may have no low-income students at their institution, keeping in mind that we will prioritize schools with the highest percentage of low-income students and those most impacted by the COVID pandemic. And this is where you will let us know the impact of the pandemic on your particular school. And you can check one or as many as are applicable to your particular PNP. That may include the loss of other income revenue other than tuition. It could be the loss of tuition revenue. Many of our schools from round one did check the decrease in enrollment. Could also be the lack of capacity to provide remote learning due to insufficient technological support, or it could also be data documenting the extent of learning loss attributable to the educational disruptions caused by COVID-19. It is possible that not all of these will apply to your school and you may have something particularly different or unique to your school. You're welcome to check this box, other, and then type in your rationale or reason for that. We do ask it that it be clear, concise, and short so that we make it a lot easier for the review process to be able to more quickly respond to your school's application. This is the area that's going to be used for the weighted proportionality to be able to determine what schools we will be prioritizing for this funding for this application for round two. So then we move on to the next section. In C4, the Paycheck Protection Program for your particular school. Did your school receive a loan guaranteed under the PPP before December 27, 2020? If you select no, you can just continue with the application. If your school did, and many of the schools in round one did receive a PPP loan before December 27, 2020, you will have an additional question to answer for us by listing the amount that your school received. And the following question, based on your receiving that PPP loan, do you certify that those funds received under the EANS program will be for services or assistance not already funded by that PPP loan? You check this box, yes, and continue with the application. The next question involves equitable services if your school received them from a local school district under the CARES Act ESSER I. Again, we had several schools that did or did not apply or receive this in round one. If your school did not, check no and continue. If your school did receive these services by a local school district, you check yes. And then we ask you for an additional question. Do you certify that any funds received under the EANS program will be for services or assistance not already provided by ESSER I equitable services? Again, you check yes to continue with the application. And then we move on to Part D. The more important parts of this section will be broken down into three primary tables, as was listed earlier in the slide decks. Three primary sections, D1, D2, and D3. Some notes to keep in mind, again, are that no PNP staff or FTEs are allowable, so they are unallowable costs under this program. Our team will review and approve allowable assistance and services, and we will delete unallowable or question activities from your application. Keep in mind that there will be no amendment process for this application, so please include all of the activities you can think of for this particular program period. That may also include estimated dollar amounts with the understanding of the limited timeline for this particular application. Even though there is no amendment process, as was mentioned earlier, we do have a negotiations process where we will email the authorized representative listed on the application for any activities that are needing clarification or possible questionable activities that we think may actually be allowable. We'll check with your school to see if that is possible. So then we ask this next question, and it depends on whether or not your school did or did not apply for round one of EANS under CRRSA. If your school applied, you must check this either yes or no. Do you certify that services and assistance being requested in this application have not been applied for in the previous CRRSA EANS I application? Again, to avoid duplication of benefits or double dipping. You check yes, and you can continue with the application. If you're a school that did not apply for round one and you're new to the EANS program and just applying for the first time for EANS I round two, you will check the last one, not applicable, and continue with the application. If for any reason you check no and continue, you will get a pop-up message at the top letting you know that based on your no response, you're telling us you're attempting to double dip, duplicate benefits, and you would not be eligible to complete this application, and you would stop at that point. But of course, you would come back and check either yes or not applicable, depending on the actual response to this question in order to be able to continue. So we'll move on to D1. Section D1 are the requests for reimbursement of previous expenses occurring from March 13, 2020 through the date of the application submission. And then in this example, we're using August 30th, 2021. For the services or assistance being requested, please provide a brief description in the first field on the left and a dollar amount on the columns in the right. If no service or assistance is being requested, you can enter an NA in this first column or leave it blank, but please be sure you enter a 0 in this dollar amount to ensure that we know nothing is being requested. So let's then go through the service or assistance for section D1 for prior expenses. Supplies to sanitize, disinfect, and clean school facilities, not including staff training on sanitation. I'll be using some examples that were previously requested in round 1. Personal protective equipment, or PPE, that does not include staff training on the use of PPE. You'll notice that I put a quantity for gloves. It is helpful to us if you can list the quantity, though it is not required. The next one is portable air purification systems. And again, I'm just using sample dollar amounts. Physical barriers to facilitate social distancing. This could include desk shields for your students. It include plexiglass shields for teachers who are doing presentations at the front of the classroom to their students, for use in common areas or even reception areas as examples. The next line item, other materials, supplies, or equipment recommended by the CDC for reopening and operation of school facilities to effectively maintain health and safety. In order to make certain items allowable, this is a section where you would want to list them. Some examples of them would include the hand sanitizer, and it would be listed in this particular section. You could also request the applicable dispensers for those items. Thermometers, or you could also list dots, stickers, or tape that's used on floors in order to better help with your students' directional social distancing. This is the section where you would want to list it to make it allowable. The next line item is expanding capacity to administer coronavirus testing to effectively monitor and suppress the virus. And this is where you want to list your testing kits. Educational technology can include hardware, software, and connectivity. The next line item is leasing sites or spaces to ensure social distancing. And you might request to rent building space next door to expand your social distancing for your students. And the next one is reasonable transportation costs. Want to give us the purpose of the transportation, the type of transportation you're requesting, and be sure that you link it to the pandemic. It should be for social distancing. That's a key item to list on this application to make this line item an allowable cost. You click right arrow to continue to the next section, which is D2. D2 has the same line items as in D1. The biggest difference is going to be the timeline. Again, it'll be for requests for reimbursements of future expenses that are occurring for the date after your application is submitted through September 30th, 2023, which is the end of the grant period. So for this section, it would be the day after August 30th, 2021 to this period here. These are for expenses that your school has not yet done, but plans on doing so. And again, you have the same information here, the same line items. We request that if you're not requesting an item, you can leave it blank or put NA. And if you're not requesting anything, please be sure you put a 0. So in that first line item, we'll say that we're okay with the supplies to sanitize. You don't need any additional items. but you still need more masks, additional gloves. You need some additional air purifiers for your remaining classrooms or some common areas. And you decided you need some cones and stanchions as examples of physical barriers for your school to use for the pickup and drop off area outside your school for your students. You still need some additional hand sanitizer. And that you also need some replacement items. Such as replacement items for your purifiers by the use of filters or replacement batteries for your thermometers. Let's say you're fine with expanding capacity, you can skip that one, but you still need additional laptops for your students, as well as hotspots. But you also need some PCs for students that are doing on-site learning and some additional smart boards for your teacher presentations. And instead of a leasing site for a building or rooms in your area, you decide you want to rent a metal container for storing the extra furniture that you're removing from your buildings in order to better social distance your students. And you're fine with the reasonable transportation, so you're not requesting any additional ones at this time. I will continue with the applications. Let's see what happens. At the very top, you'll see that you get this prompt. Please enter a valid number. And I intentionally left one of these dollar amounts blank so that you could see this message that popped up at the top. If you see that, double check to make sure you are entering dollar amounts in your entire application for dollar amounts, noting that it should not include decimals, periods, dollar signs, or commas, just whole numbers, please. Then we move on to section D3. And in this section, unlike D1 and D2, which were reimbursement requests, these are for requests for services or assistance that will be provided to your school by the Education Service Center Region 10 from August 2021 of this year through September 30th, 2023. Services and assistance, again, will be similar to, but slightly different in that where there were some assistance and services that could not be reimbursed in section D1 or D2, they are allowable in section D3 because they are being provided by the Education Service Center Region 10. Same field requests, you can leave it at blank or put in A and then include a dollar amount. So in this case, we're going to say we do need some more sanitizing spray, refill bottles, perhaps some additional cleaning cloths. You still need some more masks for your students, as well as gloves, possibly paper gowns. If you need to put students in an isolation room. This is a little different. And previously, you could only request the portable air purification systems, but now you can request the improvement to ventilation systems. For the U.S. Department of Education, repairs to windows are allowable, whereas was previously mentioned, the addition of or changing out of windows is not an allowable activity. So you could request someone to come in and make repairs to your windows at your school. We also have an additional item here that includes training and professional development for staff on sanitation, the use of PPP, and minimizing spread of infectious diseases, whereas previously you could only request the supplies. You can actually get a training or perhaps a consultant on the use of PPP or other activities to help minimize the spread of infectious diseases. Physical barriers, let's say that you still need some additional desk shields for your students, as well as plexiglass barriers for your teachers. Other materials, supplies, or equipment recommended by the CDC. Keep in mind that earlier we were requesting specific items or supplies. In this section, again, because it's being provided by Education Service Center Region 10, you can request a consultant, health coordinator, or comparable to assist with testing and monitoring, as well, of course, as requesting additional testing kits for your school. We also have the expanding capacity to administer coronavirus testing to effectively monitor and suppress the virus. You have to excuse me because this information that I listed here is incorrectly listed in this section, and it should be an expanding capacity. Whereas in the other materials, excuse me, you could list the more common ones: hand sanitizer or the dispensers. Again, you may need some more tape, dots, or stickers for social distancing of your students. We'll put a more applicable number for that example. And then we continue on with, again, with expanding capacity to administer coronavirus testing to effectively monitor and suppress the virus. This is a section where you can request a consultant, health coordinator, or comparable to assist your school with the testing and monitoring, including testing kits. And put a sample number there. And again, educational technology would include hardware, software, or connectivity. And you still need some additional PCs, as well as laptops for your students. Another new item is redeveloping instructional plans for remote or hybrid learning or to address learning loss. And again, this is where you can request a third party or a consultant to train your staff on redeveloping those instructional plans. Remote or hybrid learning, or to address learning loss. Let's say that you're fine with your metal container at your school, so you're not going to request any additional spaces. Make sure to put that 0. But did you want to go ahead and request, again, your charter bus, this time having the Education Service Center 10 providing that service to your school? Please remember to put the purpose of the trip and link it to the pandemic, which is for social distancing. And then finally, we come to initiating and maintaining education and support services or assistance for remote or hybrid learning to address learning loss. Again, this new item is where you can request a consultant or third party to assist with SEL, and to tutor students in such subjects as reading or math. And then list the applicable amount for your request. That completes section D3, which are future requests provided through the Education Service Center, Region 10. For any schools requesting reimbursements, keep in mind TEA will randomly require reasonable documentation, such as paid invoices or receipts related to those items you're requesting. Those items we're going to be looking for in the documentation is to ensure that your school not only received them, but they actually also paid for them. Again, a reminder, you're applying for CRRSA EANS I Round 2. And then this next section, you have a few options. You are able to submit your application automatically, or you can click on this back button if you want to go back to double check all of your work and your entries. You can go as far back to the beginning of the application. Just remember to come back to the very end. Some other items to keep in mind is once you submit this application, an email confirmation will be sent to the authorized representative listed on this application's email. It will also include the option for you to receive a PDF download version in the following screen, as well as an automatic print option for all of your responses. Keep in mind this email that your PNP representative receives is confirmation that TEA has received this application and it will be under review. Our team does have a 30-day review period based on the recorded date of the application. That recorded date happens when you submit your application formally through Qualtrics. Note again that funding allocations for EANS I Round 2 under CRRSA will be made public on or before December the 3rd, 2021 in the TEA website. We ask that you do not reach out to Region 10 until after EANS I Round 2 service allocations have been made public by TEA on the TEA website. So let's go ahead and submit the application. And in the next screen, you will be given the option of a download for your PDF that's not currently appearing, but it will at the time the application becomes live. So I would recommend that you go ahead and download that application, save it for yourself, and maybe share it with the team members at your school that might be helping you with the application. And that completes the live demonstration for the EANS I CRRSA Round 2 application.
So the last thing here is the live Q&A session dates that are coming up. So how to register? These are currently on the TEA's EANS webpage, and you will be sent a link the day before the event once you register through the link on that webpage. The Q&A dates are as follows. Q&A session number 1 is going to be on August 26th of 2021 from 9 to 10 a.m. The second will be August 30th from 9 to 10 a.m. as well. And the last one will be on September the 2nd from 9 to 10 a.m. as well. Again, here is myself and Lawrence's contact information. If you have any questions or need any technical assistance with the application or just EANS related questions, please feel free to give us a call or send us an email and we will reply to you as soon as possible. And with that, that will conclude the EANS I Round 2 statewide training. Thank you.